Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Christina Lenkowski, who is a publicity and podcast strategist. Christina, welcome to the program.
I am so excited to be here, Mike. I've been listening in, and I'm just excited to get in front of your audience and talk to them about being a guest on podcasts.
Well, I love how you combine publicity and podcast, because I feel like back in the old days, like David Meerman Scott, newsjacking and things like that, people would think, I need a publicist to get me in the media. And that's true. That's still a thing, and it's still respected. But I feel like the cutting edge of where we're going in being recognized and seen and our brand visibility, podcasting is just where it's at. So I want to talk to you in depth about what you do, because I know you've got a specialized service, but give us a little bit of background on what led you to focus on this area of media.
Absolutely. So I've been in the PR world for about 15 years or so, and I worked for agencies for a long time with clients spanning from Cirque du Soleil to state and regional tourism, all that good stuff. And I decided to launch my own online course about tourism PR in 2018. And when I launched it, I did what kind of all the marketing gurus or the online course gurus were saying, which was put money in ads. And that's how you drive people to, your course or whatever product it is that you're trying to sell. And even though I taught publicity, I didn't do any publicity for my first launch, because I was like, oh, well, this must be different. This must be, something that I'm new to. And it was a total flop. It did not, sell like I was hoping it was going to sell or anything like that. And so the next time that I went to launch, I was like, all right, I'm going to do this my way. And I started to get booked. I started booking myself on podcasts, and the results were just incredible. I had people seeking me out, as opposed to me, chasing after customers or trying to find new people. It was just a completely different feel when I launched the next time. And so kind of over the next year or 2 years, I really started to focus on podcasts, and that being a main way for me to get out in front of my ideal customer. And then it just kind of grew from there that is what I solely focus on now. I work with clients to get them booked on podcasts.
I love your example, and it made me think of one, but I'm going to start off by kind of making a confirming statement, which is when we're thinking about getting our thought leadership content out of our head into the ethos of the world so that our customers or potential clients or customers can see it and go, wow, they are awesome. Let's talk to them at least. And then, hey, let's do some work with them. We have a lot of options, right? Back in the old days, it used to be called content marketing, because it went from push, sell, to, hey, let me teach you this, and you ought to consider that, and here's some options. Well, now content marketing, in my opinion, is not even a thing anymore, because it should just be darn good marketing, right? Call it what you want, right. Content or not. It's just the way you should market. It came from a flash in the pan of content marketing to this is the way you should market. Well, now you can think about your content as, hey, let's do a Facebook Live, let's do a YouTube, let's do a blog post, whatever. Well, here's an example I give so many times, and let's just think of, one specific, some consultant that consults in the whatever space, and they know that if their prospect would understand this one point and then this other point, that they would just get it. So let's just think that they sit down and they write a really in-depth article. Now, what do you do with that? Okay, let me put it on my blog. Okay, upload WordPress, upload, good, yay. Let me put it on Facebook, paste, good. And let me speak it and do a Facebook Live or a YouTube Live, good. Here's my opinion of those aspects. While they are necessary and needed, people realize intuitively that your WordPress blog is copy, paste, upload free. They realize that the barrier to entry for the Facebook Live, the YouTube Live is like free. You go click, go live and speak. But if you take that same article and you go, ooh, I'm going to get it on Forbes, or I'm going to put it as a compilation article and get published on Amazon, now that same information is perceived much higher quality. So you could do the, antithesis of the YouTube or the Facebook Live and take the audio out of those videos and put that on your website and go, hey, here's this audio. And they're like, okay, yeah, whatever. But when you have an interview on a podcast and you're the one being interviewed, now all of a sudden people are like, oh, that's pretty cool. And they listen. And I literally had someone just the other day contact me out of the blue. I got hey, here, let's schedule this phone call. And we did this consultation, and this person is very well positioned in their business and high quality lead. And I was like, hey, just by the way, how'd you hear about me? And he goes, oh, I heard you on this podcast you did with this patent attorney. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So it's exactly what you do. And I just wanted to preface that by saying we must get our content out there in much more authoritative, respective platforms than only the traditional things like I mentioned. Mm-hmm. When you're on those podcasts, that elevates your brand.
Absolutely. And what you just said is also true. And kind of something that I teach at a basic level is, your marketing should fall into three circles, and that's owned, earned, and paid. And a lot of people focus on the owned and the paid. The owned is what you just spoke about, your social media channels, your blog, etc. Paid is those Facebook ads like I was talking about that I ran. And a lot of people tend to leave out the earned. And that is being on other people's podcasts, being in the media. And the reason it's called earned is because you don't pay for these opportunities.
Yeah.
I'm not paying to be a part of this podcast today. I'm coming and bringing value to your audience. And in return, I'm able to get in front of a new audience. And I think that that's what people they think, oh, this is too much work for something that isn't a guaranteed result. And I understand that. I understand that when you're doing earned work and you're doing earned outreach, you're like, I don't know if this is going to turn out or not. So I don't know if this is an actual, going to be a return on my investment. But the thing is, even if one out of the three things that you pitch lands, the one thing that lands is going to be worth so much more than the other things that you've maybe put out there. Because again, like you said, there was a barrier to entry and people know that. They respect it more. And that particular, piece of earned media is going to go a lot further than things that you might just create.
100%. So now let's talk about when someone is hearing this and going, ooh, this is a great, I hear all the buzz. Everyone should have their own podcast, yeah. Podcasting. One of the other elements is this, your mind, and this is just a personal pet peeve of mine. Maybe you're the same way, but you know how you want to go, oh, hey, look, here's this video that so-and-so put out on their website. I'm going to watch that. Click, and you start watching the video and you're like, oh, this is really good stuff. I'm going to listen to it while I, enter this email. And you go away from the browser and boom, it stops, because Wistia or whoever they use will sense you've left the browser and stop. And it's like, I don't need to watch their lips move to hear their message. So the benefit of podcasting is you're in between their ears without that, that frustration of stopping or having to watch. And it's so much more portable.
Absolutely. And, a big, sign of that is the fact that the fastest growing age group, the biggest age group listening to podcasts, is those people that are 34 to 54. And, the reason for that is that particular age group, which I myself fall in, which is kind of like older millennials, Gen Z, that type of thing, is we don't, to your point, want to have to sit down and watch something. It is so nice to be able to just pop in our AirPods and go for a walk or do the laundry or take the kids to school. Those are all things that we can do while we still consume content.
100%. Yeah, that's a really big piece. So now let's think about this. Someone is listening to this going, okay, I need to get my content out to my target audience in cutting edge ways. We're talking about podcasting. Good gracious, where do I start? Because I want to get on shows, but man, you go to iTunes and how do I get hold of that person? And then you get what do you do?
Yes, that is the big question always, and The very first step that I recommend doing is asking your audience, the current audience that you have, your ideal customers, what podcasts are they listening to? This is a really easy, low-hanging fruit thing that you can do. You can post it on your social media, say, hey, just shoot me back. What podcasts are you listening to currently? You can also put it in an e-newsletter. You can do something like that. Just have people reply. And that's a great way to kick off your research when you're starting from ground zero. And then the next thing you can do is, hopefully get a couple of podcasts, pop them into Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever it is that you like to listen to podcasts. And the cool thing that I do is I'll pop something in. So let's say I put the name of your podcast, Mike, into iTunes. I can then go down to the bottom and see there's this whole line of you might also like. And so then I'm going to see about 5 or 6 other shows that people that have listened to Mike's show also listen to. And that's a great wealth of information for you to be able to go into and start finding some shows that you think make sense for your ideal audience. That's the big thing that I want you to keep in mind. Being on a podcast is great, but you need to be on a podcast strategically. You need to be thinking about, is their audience who my ideal customer is? Because otherwise, it's not worth your time. And I would always rather be on a podcast with 100 downloads that's of my ideal customer than 10,000 downloads of people that don't care about what I have to say. So that's what I really want you to get in on, is don't be worried and caught up with numbers. Be thinking, is this the ideal audience for me? And just start to do your research from there.
Have you ever heard of the book and the concept called the Ask Campaign by Ryan Levesque?
I do know Ryan Levesque, and so yes, I do know that, but I'm not familiar with the book.
Really, really good book. You ought to check it out. But basically, it is meant for how to figure out what your people want, right? Because Seth Godin wrote the book Tribes, and basically he says, build a whole bunch of people, build your tribe, and listen to what they want, and then give it to them. Don't try to create something and sell it to them. Listen, ask them what they want. Hey, for that software program that you have of ours, what would you love to have? And they mention some things, and you go, cool, and now they're going to buy it. So I think what you just said is so neat, because you go to your social media, your email list, and you go, hey guys, what's your favorite podcast? And I bet people are going to be going, boop, 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 boop. And then now you can follow exactly the steps that you were describing there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that that's a great place to start, is with that research. And if you're not a podcast fan already, just start listening to some. That's huge too. Get an idea of kind of what they're all about, what they're like. That's the thing for my clients. We're doing a lot of research before we send any pitch. And I got to tell you, that's the biggest thing that I want your audience to know is, don't just blanket send out pitches to hosts. Make sure you've done some research in the back end so they know that you've actually listened to them before you're trying to ask them for a coveted spot on their show. Because I don't know if this happens to you, Mike, but almost every single podcast host that I know or that I work with, they say that this is their biggest issue, is that they just get a ton of emails from people that clearly have never even listened to their show, done any kind of research, anything like that, and it drives them absolutely crazy. So that's what I will do, because I get that so many times, hey, I was listening to your show and I absolutely love what you're doing, and I've got this guest that I would love to bring you onto your show, and they are the blah, 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 blah. And I'll reply back and go, oh, awesome, thanks so much. What did you love about my show? And you'll get nothing back, because it's like their form, right? It's their form letter. So here's a thing that I would ask. So here now is someone thinking, I've got to get my thought leadership out there. Podcasting is the cutting edge. Gary Vee talks about, being on podcast. Audio is where it's at. In fact, he's known recently in the last few months for saying, or, maybe a year, for saying that, voice search, voice, audio. Voice is where it's at, with the online search and the Alexa and the Google, all the things that are out there with voice. So podcasting is where things are moving. And if someone is going, okay, good, I can do all this search and then do the ask and then reach out, and I got
I got better things to do than to mess around with all that stuff. So what is the service that you bring that would help to accomplish that goal, but then make it a lot more efficient?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually kind of funny because what you were talking about, Seth Godin's book, like that's essentially what I did. So when I started out, I was teaching people how to pitch themselves to podcasts. And that's still something that I offer. I have a product on that. But most people were saying to me, can you just do it for me? And so that was actually what the business that I built now is completely from. People saying, look, this is all great, but this is going to take me a lot of time. So what is it that you can do that, can you just do this on my behalf? So what I do now, me and my team, is we take on a certain number of clients a month and we pitch on their behalf, and we're pitching to audiences that, we're pitching to their ideal clients. We're making sure that this is the right audience for them, that this is who they want to get in front of with the topics they want to get in front of. Because we do those research pitches and we have those connections, we have a great success rate. But one thing that I do, that I offer, that is very different from most PR people or PR agencies, is I actually offer a guarantee amount of bookings. So that really speaks to a lot of entrepreneurs because they obviously like to, and I'm an entrepreneur myself, so that's why I do this, because I want to make sure that I know, okay, by the end of this time, I'm going to have gotten on X number of podcasts. And I think that that's really important. Like I said before, I come from the PR agency world, and my biggest pet peeve was that we could never give actual hard numbers on anything, to be able to say, hey, this, you'll get in front of this many people or this will happen, X, Y, Z. So for me, I'm very, very passionate about leading this business with integrity and saying this is how many places we're going to get you on, but they're going to be quality places. Like, you don't need to stress that I'm just trying to get you on this many. These are going to be places that your ideal customer is hanging out. And, my clients have been very happy thus far with that and who we get them on.
I think that's stupendous and wonderful. And here's something that made me think about after you have someone that kind of gets in the flow of being that podcast guest and doing interviews, and it's kind of like, running smooth, right? I would say that if you could advise them, or maybe you send them this interview and this gives them a great ninja strategy. I would feel that, and this is the way I train my clients as well, there are going to be 3 to 5, let's just call them core pillar questions. Let's just call them questions that your target audience has about your product or service. And once they understand those 3 to 5 core pillar things about your solution to the problem that they face, they get it, and it's like the sale is made, right? And it's not the 10 basic frequently asked questions, like what it's like 3 to 5 things that are like aha moments. And so what I would say is, okay, for you've done your 10, 15, 20 interviews and they're going well. Hey, before you do your next interview, ask the host, after we do our pleasantries and introduction, could we focus the interview on this one point right here, this one right here, this? And of course they're going to go, yeah, sure, we'll go deep on that. Well, now the cool thing is you do that for those 3 to 5, and now you've got core podcast episodes that you can use in your business development, your inbound leads, your, website. And what a cool thing to use on your website rather than FAQ, here's a question, here's the answer. FAQ, have you ever been concerned that blah, 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 blah? Well, here's the answer. I was recently interviewed on this podcast where I covered that exact, question. And so I think that is just so powerful to be able to consider that way.
100%. And I'll take it a step further. In addition to using those things on your website, which I think is a great idea, by the way, might have to add that into what I recommend, because right now what I really recommend is you can use these podcast clips. Like, I'll do this with this interview with Mike. So I realize this is very meta, what I'm telling you right now. But I will take this interview and I will get it chopped up into 1-minute snippets based on things that we say, little pieces of information. And then I'll use those on my social media channels as well. So I will take those 1-minute snippets, 1 minute or less, put them on Instagram, tag Mike, be able to use this in perpetuity to keep promoting my brand and, keep promoting myself as a thought leader, like you've been talking about throughout this, by saying, hey, here I am on someone else's podcast talking about this specific thing. So in addition to the website, in addition to those things, also know that you can be utilizing this for social media, moving forward in just little snippets.
Well, and let's take it one step further, because we're playing now ping pong. You're hitting it to me, I'm hitting it to you. So you take those snippets, and you take the question, and maybe you take a one-sentence answer, and you use that in your email outreach to your list, because hopefully you're building a list, and maybe in your autoresponder series, the email subject line is, hey, have you ever wondered about, worried about, felt concerned about? In this podcast episode, I talked about this. Check it out. Let me know what you think. And so now it becomes it's the repurposing of content. My whole point is, too many times people feel like, yay, I got another podcast interview. Oh, well, my background is, and my company does, and we help people. Okay, have a nice day. Same old thing, right? So do the intro, and then take 3 to 5 to 7 or whatever of these episodes, and have them in your little, back pocket for when people email or call in. And depending on how your company is set up, you might have people that customer service reps that answer and field questions, and they could go, oh, hey, that's a really, really good question. In fact, are you in front of your computer? Okay, head over to this page where, see that link right there, or the podcast episode, Betty, Joe, Tom, he answers that right there in that interview. Or, hey, in fact, what is your email address? I'm going to send you a couple other interviews he recently did with some other really important questions like blah, blah, blah. So whether you're doing it social media, audiogram type clips, email, outbound, website for inbound, use the podcast, because here's the thing. If you do a Facebook Live, YouTube Live, like I mentioned, people intuitively know that is a push technique. You are selling, no matter what people, oh, I didn't say bye now. Yeah, but they know you're overtly going out to present this stuff. But when you're interviewing, you're in a podcast interview, now all of a sudden you're being asked questions. And that becomes now a positioning play in the mind of that target audience.
Absolutely. I mean, everything you said is perfect, and that's exactly how it should be used. It should be used not only as a one-time thing, but something that you can use in perpetuity. And the other thing is, I got to tell you, when you go to a homepage of someone's website and they have a bunch of logos of places that they've been featured, trust me when I tell you that that's a big deal for a potential client or customer when they see that you have this kind of authority.
And I'll do one better than that, when they have links to the actual places, not just some logos, random logos, but when it's like, Forbes logo. Oh, cool. Click. Oh, there's the article on Forbes. And whatever podcast, click. Oh, there it is. So don't just use the logos. Quantify it by going, and click here to watch this, listen to this, read this. So you're exactly right. Those are called trust triggers. When you can trust that person or that brand, it triggers even more, or that logo triggers the trust. And it's kind of like this. I've got a PowerPoint presentation that I do, and this is so funny because when we're talking about trust triggers, do you know that when you go to, let's just say, Amazon, and it's like, top picks are, or you go to Netflix, hey, look, here's the trending movies, and you have that herd mentality, and you trust that recommendation because other people have had it, right? Well, is there really a difference in this PowerPoint? I've got like an animated slide where it's got this hand with the thumb up holding a phone. And the slide says, in reality, if you think about it, there is not much difference between hitchhiking, and here's this person with the hand up, and then Uber, and then pop, it goes, here comes the phone with Uber logo. And think about that. Would you pick up a hitchhiker? Would you jump in a car with someone you didn't know? Your mom and dad tell you not to, but Uber, the only thing we're trusting is on some app that this person's picture showed up and they've got some reviews that were hopefully accurate, and I'm hopping into their personal car and hopefully they're going to do right by me. So I think that it's such a big thing to use these authority positioning triggers, trust triggers, podcasts, and use these and get them out there and do it consistently. Don't think that, yay, guess what? I had this goal of getting on some podcasts, and thank you, Christina. You got me on 5 shows, and that'll do it. Thanks. That's just like going to someone's Facebook page and seeing that their last post was 18 months ago. Who cares that you posted 378 posts 18 months ago? You need to be consistent. So what are your final thoughts on that? And then what is the best way that people can reach out to you and see how your service may benefit them?
Absolutely. I mean, to the point that you just said, excuse me, I actually call it sustainable visibility. And that's what I'm ultimately looking for each of my clients. When they're a guest on podcasts, we're not trying to do it all in one big chunk of time. We want to make sure that that's kind of something that's continually happen, because you want to keep popping up in people's, on people's notifications of the podcast that they like to listen to. So I love that you just said that and kind of broke that down. When it comes to working with me, you can find my information and find out how to work with me at publicitybychristina.com/podcast. And I'll make sure that Mike has that link for the show notes. It's Publicity X Christina, I will just say, because I thought I was really clever when I came up with my URL.
Well, kind of like South by Southwest.
Yeah, I was like, I'm hip, I'm cool. So it's publicitybychristina.com/podcast. I have a resource there, a free resource that you can download, which is to see if you're ready to be a podcast guest. And then I also have 3 different ways that you can work with me. And I absolutely love working with entrepreneurs, speakers, authors, to help get them on some North American-based podcasts. And that's what my main bread and butter is, and that's what I love to do.
I love it. Thanks, Christine. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.